So this is for the 2018 Municipal Food Scraps Reduction, Food Donation, and Food Scraps Recycling Programs. In the Grants Gateway, you'll see it under that name, and it's also got the ID of DEC 01, DMM-FSR, FSR for Food Scraps Recycling, 2018. So like I said, there's that ID, DMM-FSR. Your application number will take on that ID. The full name there that we'll search for, you don't have to search for the whole name, so I can search for the word food scraps and I'll find it. A couple key dates to keep in mind. The application deadline is March 1st, 2019 at 3 p.m. So no late applications will be accepted. The gateway closes down your ability to submit an application after 3 o'clock on March 1st. So don't wait till the last minute. We strongly suggest you submit your application 24, even 48 hours in advance. We allow for questions. Please do ask questions if you don't know certain things. And you can send that in. I'll show you the email address in a few minutes. You'll send that into the DEC and they will answer your question. They'll post it on the Grants Gateway and I'll show you where that's found. And all the questions will be answered and the answers will be posted by February 25th, 2019. So your questions are due by February 22nd, by the end of the day, and they'll be uploaded to the Gateway by February 25th. The DEC will be answering those questions on a rolling basis, so they're not waiting until February 25th to answer them. Every once in a while, they'll put in some new answers, and I think we might have some already, so I'll show you where that is. The applications you're putting in for, if you were awarded a contract, the contract would be from 6/5/2019 through 6/4/2022. So that is a 3-year budget, a 3-year project. The budget that you're going to put in here, if you put in an application, will be for the entire 3 years. It's not year by year, it's for 3 years as a whole. Okay, so a little bit about the program. This is funding to local governments for waste reduction and recycling projects. And the overall goal of this funding program is to assist municipalities in expanding local waste reduction and recycling programs and increase the participation in those programs. So the MWRR State Assistance Program can help fund the costs of capital investment in facilities and equipment, recycling, education, promotion, and outreach, and coordination, and waste reduction, capital, or education costs. There's a whole list of eligible and ineligible costs in the RFA that we'll look at. I'm not going to go through it all, but I'll point out where it is. So eligible projects are expected to enhance the reduction, recovery, and/or recycling programs of municipalities with relation to food waste. So for general information and completing the application or clarification on certain things, clarification on the RFA, you can send in any questions to that organicsgrants@dec.ny.gov. You'll see that in several places in the Gateway and in the documentation related to this. Send emails to that if you have questions. Please put in the Food Assistance RFA in the subject line of the email. That way we know what it's about. And like I said earlier, the questions will be accepted until February 22nd and will be answered by the 25th. I'll show you where to find those answers in a few minutes. We also have technical assistance for the Grants Gateway. If you need help with the Gateway, maybe you have a password problem or a user rights issue or something like that, you can email us or call us. You can see we have a website as well. So the website is grantsreform.ny.gov, and if you went to the Grantees tab, you would find documents and videos and guidance to help you through the Gateway. You can also email us at grantsgateway@its.ny.gov or call us at 518-474-5595. The help desk is open from 8 to 4 every weekday. There is also a training calendar. I would ignore that for you since you're in a municipality. One thing that's on the training calendar is pre-qualification or the document vault. That does not apply to municipalities, so you don't have to worry about that. And the other thing on the calendar is how to apply for a grant, which is what we're doing right here. So instead of attending yet another webinar on that, I would actually watch the video that will be produced from this. So you can ignore that training calendar. Okay, so if you haven't done already, we have to talk about registration first. So all entities that wish to apply for grants in New York State must be registered in the Grants Gateway first. The process is pretty simple, but it's actually a mailed-in form, so you do have to take the time to print it out, fill it out, and mail it. So not only do you have to mail it, or not only do you have to fill it out, you have to get it notarized. So print it out, fill it out, get it notarized, and then send it in to us in Albany. So registration could take as up to a week, because if you don't have a Grants Gateway, what's called a SFS, Statewide Financial System, if you don't have an SFS vendor ID, that takes us 2 or 3 days to obtain for you before we can even register your organization. So if you're not registered and you don't have an SFS vendor ID, it could take a week or so to get going. So again, don't wait until the last minute. Do this as soon as possible. Most municipalities are registered, but a lot of small ones aren't. So again, make sure you are. That's the first step, obviously. The Grants Reform website that I just mentioned has more information about that. And the Grant Opportunity Portal, you can actually get the registration form at both those locations, which I will show you. Just another note about pre-qualification or document vault. Municipalities and tribal organizations are not required to follow pre-qualification, so it's not an option for you. Don't worry about it. If you hear about it and you think you have to do it, you don't. If you're a municipality or a tribal organization, you don't have to worry about it. It's only for not-for-profit entities. Okay, so the next thing after you get registered is figuring out and setting up your user roles. So we set up one person, and that's the Grantee Delegated Administrator down here in the bottom left. And that person could work on the document vault if they needed to, but again, the municipality doesn't have to worry about it. But the other thing they do is add or edit user accounts. So we leave it up to you to decide who gets an account and what can they do in the system. The Grants Gateway is role-based, meaning not only do you have to have an account, but your account has a specific role, which allows you to do only certain things in the gateway. There's not one role that does everything. So for instance, you might want to set up somebody in the role of grantee, up here in the top left. This is somebody who can start an application, they can edit the application, save details of it, budget, work plan, and so on, but they can't submit it to us. So when you're getting to the deadline, you don't want somebody in the role of grantee, you need one of these other users on the right here, either the grantee contract signatory or the grantee system administrator. The contract signatory, as the name implies, can sign contracts, but they can also submit applications. So if we take a look at their rights, they have all the same rights as the grantee. They can start applications, edit them, fill out the work plan, budget, and details. They can also submit the application before the due date, of course. And you must have somebody in this role, or at least the grantee system administrator role, to submit it before that deadline. Grantee system administrator has those same abilities and a few other additional administrator abilities that we don't need to get into here. So regardless, you need to have somebody in a role on the right here to submit your application. And if you want to, maybe you're a larger organization or you have a grant writer or something, you can have somebody in the role of grantee to fill out the application. Okay, so that's important. You would get that started right away after you get registered. So a couple more notes about system roles. Like I said, the Grantee Delegated Administrator can add new accounts, work in the document vault, but cannot work on grant applications. So you're going to need more than just that one. At the very least, you need to have somebody with a signatory role so they can submit your application. User role in the grantee, a user in the role of grantee can start the application but can't submit it. And then we have no problem with you having more than one account. It's perfectly acceptable for one person to have multiple roles, and thus you would have multiple accounts in the gateway. You can even use the same email address, use the same passwords, but the user IDs or the user names would be different. So what are the next steps here? So we want to make sure that your organization is registered in the Grants Gateway. That's obviously step number one. Make sure that you have somebody set up in those appropriate roles so that you can get into the application system and start applying, and of course submit it eventually. download and read the RFA in its entirety. There's a lot of things that you might be wondering that we've already answered. They're already answered in the RFA or in the questions. So you can submit questions to us. Again, feel free to do that. And then look at those answers that have been provided. The answers are provided for every question, so it's fair to everybody to see what was asked and how it was answered. Start your application, the sooner the better, and then submit it prior to the deadline, obviously, and we suggest 24 or 48 hours before the deadline. So we strongly suggest not to wait until the last hour or the last few minutes to do it. Too many people have done that, and then they've realized they forgot to do something, they missed a section, and they missed the deadline. So we don't want you missing a deadline. Go to that grants reform website just to show you. That's at grantsreform.ny.gov. We're actually revamping this website, and it should be updated in a few weeks. But right here, you would go to the grantsreform.ny.gov and to the Grantees tab. And on here, you can see in the left, there's links to the training calendar, which I said you probably don't need. The registration form is right here. I'll take a look at it. And I mentioned before that you fill it out here. You select which type of entity you are. You put in your delegated administrators, at least one of them, but you can put in two. Last name, first name, title, email, etc. You have to have the head of the organization authorize it, and you have to have it signed and stamped by a notary public. The instructions are on page 2. If you don't have an SFS vendor ID, again, that's that thing that takes maybe 2 or 3 days extra, you would have to fill out this substitute W-9 form. But it's all explained here, and the address to mail it to is down here in the bottom of this second page. So that's the registration form, and that's found here in the Grants Reform website. Some other guides, information about pre-qualification, which you don't worry about. All right, but then there's the Grants Gateway, which you can see the address is grantsgateway.ny.gov. You can see I've highlighted it up here. I want to point out, though, a lot of people are in the habit of going to www or putting in www when they go to a website. Don't do that. You can see you'll get an error here that says it's not secure. And if I was to click this more information, I could actually go to that website, but it gives you that red error and that there's no certificate. So we are a secure website, but not at www. You just have to go to grantsgateway.ny.gov. Do not use the www. So I'm in the Grants Gateway. I went to the portal, and in the portal I can search for grant opportunities without even logging in. You'll notice I didn't even log in yet. So going backwards on this page from right to left, there's registration. You can click on this, request access now, and there's the form to get that registration form I talked about. There's the W-9 form if you need to fill that out as well. If you know your SFS vendor ID, you can type it in here and click this verify button. And if it exists, it'll tell you who your delegated admins are, people at your organization that you might want to contact for access. So that was the registration button on the Grants Reform site. Next is notification. A little late for this now, but if you wanted to sign up for the future, you can click on sign up now and sign up to be alerted the next time any grant opportunities that might interest you are posted. So you put in your name and email address here, and you select which type of grant opportunities you're interested in. And you see you can select or deselect all of them if you want. That way you'll get an email whenever one is posted. So that was registration, notification, and then to actually find grant opportunities, you could browse, which just shows a list of everything that's out there right now. Or you can search, which is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to search for this grant opportunity that we're talking about here. So if I go and go for search grant opportunity, I can type the words food scraps. You don't have to type the whole thing. Probably could get away with just typing the word food, and then hit search. And when I search for it, I find one item that has those words food scraps in it because it's the 2018 Municipal Food Scraps Reduction, Food Donation, and Food Scraps Recycling Programs. That's the one we're looking for. We can see it's offered by the DEC. It's currently available. Governmental entities and tribal organizations can apply. It was posted on September 5th, and like we said, the due date is March 1st. So if you want to find more about it, and including getting the RFA, you click on this link here to the grant opportunity. This brings you to the profile of this grant opportunity, And remember, I talked about the unique ID it has. Your application would be this number plus a 5-digit number at the end. So if you're the first one to apply, it's this number dash 00001. The agency, the name, contact name, that email address that I talked about, organicsgrants@dec.ny.gov, if you have questions. The solicitation profile, this just is a couple paragraphs explaining the program. There's a couple updates they made. They added the webinar that we're currently on right now. At the bottom of this is where you can actually view the RFP. We'll do that in a minute. We're not going to do it just yet. And on the right, there's a couple other lines of information. There's that due date and time again, 3 p.m. on March 1st. We anticipate that awards will be made in April. They are 3-year contracts. There's $1.2 million total available. Your applications can be for between $1,000 and $250,000. A little more detail about this, the maximum grant award allocated for staffing resources is $150,000. That's explained in the RFA as well. Again, the questions and answers, we will be uploading the answers, and here is that upload. So you can see this click here. If I click on it, it is a PDF with all the questions that have been asked so far and how they've been answered as of on Monday, 9/24. So I'm not going to go through these. You should, though. And this list will grow as time goes by, and you should check it periodically to verify that. So that's this click here link in questions and answers link or upload. It says you have to have questions, or that we'll have them by 12 a.m. on the 25th. That's just kind of a little bug here. It won't be 12 a.m. It'll be sometime on the 25th when the final document is posted here. Again, who can apply? The target population are governmental entities, and the service areas are environmental supports. This is just what drives that email that was sent out automatically that you could have signed up for. All right, so this is the profile of this grant opportunity. And then we'll look at the actual grant opportunity RFP. So we'll click on this. It'll allow us to open or download it. And we can see it is a 18-page PDF. And it's got an amendment. Whenever there's an amendment, they'll talk about it on the first page. They included the contract start and end dates, and they included the webinar information. So again, that ID, again, the timetable that we've talked about, and then a table of contents here. So I'm going to just, again, this is really up to you to read this and understand it, but I'm going to go through and point out a couple of things here. So there's an introduction, information about the program, a warning or in the red about when the application is due. Webinar information, who can apply. This talks about who can apply, so someone asked about counties. You can see that's in here. Explains what public education, promotion, and outreach is, what is waste reduction, what is food recovery, talks about the funding. Project timeframes, remember we talked about the dates, so it'll be 6/5/2019 to 6/4/2022. Okay, only one application per entity, per organization. So this talks about how things are scored. So you might want to look at this to see how well your application might be scored based on the type of project you have, based on other things that you can bring into your project. So understand that the highest scoring ones will be the ones funded, and you can score better by having this type of information in your project. We have a list of eligible and then ineligible costs, so go through that and make sure what you want to do is actually something that can be covered. Talks about match. There is a match requirement, so I'm not going to go into details of this. My budget will include a match when I do this test here, but this will walk you through what's required here. Different forms of match. Talks about the application procedure, which of course we'll be doing in a few minutes. It talks about if you were to be awarded the contract, how the contracting process works. That's a few other pages. Reporting, and it actually goes through the different questions you'll be asked. So when we get into the application, these are the questions we need to answer. Contact information, are you an eligible entity as of, according to page 2 of this RFA? Does your budget include match fund requirements on page 5? Talks about, these are other questions that you'll be answering and I'll be answering as I go through. So you can see there's a good number of questions here, 13 of them. Gives you an overview of the instructions here, how to complete the application, and then information about receiving an award and so on. All right, so I'm not going through this in details. That's your job. Whatever's in the RFP or RFA and in the Q&A, if it's not covered, if your question isn't covered, please do ask that question in writing to DEC. All right, so that's the RFA. So I've looked at it, and I've now decided, yep, I want to apply. How do I do that? Well, first we have to log into the gateway, and that would be this login up here in the top left. And you can log in here. Now I'm going to go to a different site that we have, a test site. So I'm going to log into and do a fake application, but it looks exactly the same. So same deal, I go to the Grants Gateway, click on the login, and I'm going to log in as this person. Okay, so I log in, and it says I'm in the role of grantee. And if you remember back to the PowerPoint, the grantee can start the application but can't submit it. And that's fine. The way I wanted to show this, that's how I wanted to do it. All right, so just an overview of the Grants Gateway as a whole. Let me zoom in here for you if it's a little easier to see. We'll start with the top here, this kind of gray bar, and that I would call is opportunities for searching. So you can search the portal. You can search for any application your organization might have started, any contracts your organization might have received. You can search for payments that are related to contracts. You can search for progress reports that are related to contracts, and you can search for tasks that are related to contracts. So really in this perspective of this RFA and this grant opportunity, you would only be searching for applications. Obviously we haven't started one yet, so you wouldn't have one here to find. But if you did, you'd click on applications and search in some of these fields to find it. I'll actually do that later. Black bar here you can see is kind of reference. We've got a link to training materials. This is your organization, so if you need to edit something about your organization, you can click on it and edit it. The grantee delegated admin would use this button to go in and add new users. Profile is your personal profile, and log out would obviously log you out. All right, so next on this page is a couple other buttons. One thing that's missing is tasks, and I don't have any tasks, but when I start this application, I will have one. So that would be on the bottom here. But we also have the inbox, which you can ignore. All this is a copy of any email you might have received from the system. Doesn't help you at all in the application or contracts or anything. It's just kind of a repository to save things. So don't worry about that. View available opportunities. This is where you're going to start to look for the grant opportunity and actually apply for it. So just to recap, remember we went through the portal before we even logged in, and we searched for it. But that's not how you're going to apply. To apply for it, you have to go here to view opportunities and search for it. So again, I'll search for the word food scraps and hit search. And I find that there's one opportunity with the words food scraps in it. You know, this should look familiar to us if you click on it. This looks familiar as well. This is that same overview page, except for the difference is this down here in the bottom left. Now instead of clicking on it to get the RP, we click on it to apply. And that's what I'll do. I will apply for this one. Okay, so I've started an application. I'm application number 6, so that means I'm the 6th person to start an application here. We can see we now have a couple new buttons here. We have this menu, which actually brings us to this application main page that we're on. We have the forms menu. That is a bunch of different forms. This is where you fill out your application. So you'll go through that in order to fill out your application. We'll do that in a minute. Status changes. When I'm ready to submit it, I'll be able to do it through status changes here. Management tools. You can see there's 2 items here. We'll go through those in a few minutes when we're ready. And then progress reports and related documents. Those are related to contracts. And since this isn't a contract, it doesn't matter for this one. It's not related for this. So you can ignore that. The main page is just an overview of what you've put in for so far. Obviously, we've done nothing so far. All right, so we do want to go to the Forms menu. You'll notice you can hover on it and go to each item, but instead, it's probably a better idea to just click on the words Forms menu, and you'll see the whole menu here. So I'll walk you through the different options. And you really should just go through it in order. First of all, is contract documents. This is not something you need to do. It's just information for you. If you wanted to know what documents make up a contract, you could click on it and you can see that there's the state's master grant contract. There's the attachment A1, which is the program-specific terms and conditions, the budget, work plan, payment, and reporting schedule, which you'll be, at least portions of it, you'll be entering, and then any other attachments, which you can see there are none. So all this is information for you. If you were to receive a contract, what would it look like? And that's here under Contract Document Properties. The next part of it is a way to look at your application, so you can print application. We haven't filled anything out yet, so there's no point in doing that, but I'll do it later. If you need another link to the RFP, here it is. And once we submit our application, it'll be saved here as one big PDF, and we can retrieve it by going to Application Versions. Again, we haven't done anything yet, so there's nothing there yet. Now this is where the application actually starts. Program information, you'll fill out your address, and you'll answer the questions. You'll go to the budget, and you'll fill out your budget based on the parameters that we allow for in the RFA. You'll go to the work plan, you'll fill out the overview form, and then fill out a work plan, which includes objectives, tasks, and performance measures. There's some uploads here that we'll look at. In fact, I'll do that first. And then there's the Grantee document folder, which allows you to upload any additional documents if you need to. It's only really if you need to. We don't really want you to just randomly add things that you think might help if we haven't asked for it. But let's just take a look at pre-submission uploads, because there's a few things in here that might help us as we go through. So when we fill out the budget, there's a supplemental budget sheet. If you have something additional to add, upload budget documents in support of the figures entered in the budget section of the gateway. You can add that here. There is supplemental project question descriptions. We'll look at question number 6 and you'll see what that means. There's a placeholder in case there's something else you need to upload. And then there's a work plan worksheet. So when we get to the work plan, we can download this worksheet to help us organize our thoughts, basically, or organize our work plan. So I'm going to go back to the Forms menu. I don't need any of those right now, but I just wanted to point that out. Again, that was the pre-submission uploads near the bottom here of the Forms menu. But now let's go in order. So we'll go to project site addresses. Now I happen to pick the town, or village, I think, of Penn Yan, New York. If anybody here is from Penn Yan, I apologize, but I just picked anything that came to my mind. Something like that. I don't even know an address, so I'll just say, I don't even know what county it's in. I'll just use Albany here. All right. Now there's two sections after you fill out your address, the regional council and agency-specific region. You'll notice that NA is an option for regional council. You don't need to answer that, so don't worry about that. Agency-specific region, same deal. It's blank. You can leave it blank. We don't need those. So I've filled those sections out that I need to, and I'll hit Save. So I hit Save, and I got this green light that says the information has been saved. So it saved this page, and I can move on to another one. Now notice there's some fields that have red asterisk. Those are required fields. So if I forgot to fill this one out, or I skipped it for some reason, and then I tried to save the page, so I hit Save up here in the blue bar, it gives me an error. The project name description is a required field. So I need to fill that out. The good thing is I don't lose anything else on my page, but I do have to fill that out before I submit my application. So let me finish that, or fix that. I'll hit Save, and that error has gone away, and the name is in there. Okay, so that's easy enough. Now, if you did have several different addresses where your project would be run out of, you can click the Add button here, up in the blue bar, and now I have a blank address line that I can fill out. So if I filled something else out here, you can see I'm just randomly typing in junk, and I hit save, I now have a drop-down allowing me to toggle between, whoops, I hit go there, allowing me to toggle between the two different entries. And if I realize this one is junk and I need to delete it, I can hit the delete key and say, okay, yes, I want to delete this entire page. And if I go back to project, to the addresses, I can see that I just have the one that I entered. So that was the add button if you need to add a second entry. All right, so let's go back to the forms menu. And the next thing is program-specific questions. That's that list of questions that you'll need to answer and that you'll be scored on. All right, so I'll call this the NYS okay. Maybe we're going to do some composting or something like that. I haven't really come up with a plan yet. You should by this point. All right, question number one is just your contact info. So please enter in your municipality name, contact name, address, phone, and email. So I'm not really going to do that. I'm just going to write here is the answer. You would obviously enter in that information that we're asking for. So if you were to go back to the RFA, page 2, section 2.0, let's do that. So now it's actually page 3, but it's this section 2.0. Who can apply? Are you one of these types of entities? All right, so that's what that question is about, and yes, I am. Yeah, there's an upload section here. If you need it, you can see it's not required. If you need to prove something, I don't really know the reason for that. If DEC wants to expand upon that, they can type it in chat. Number 3, what are the following categories of this project? They just wrote no particular reason, so really no reason to put anything there for number 2. Number 3, which of the following categories is this project targeting? So again, we talked about the types of projects in that RFA, and I would go through that and see how this lines up with your program. And you would just pick one of these. So let's say mine is wasted food prevention and reduction. Okay? Number 4, what type of project is this? Please record all that apply to your project. So I'm just going to randomly pick things that may not go with each other. But you can see I'm just answering the question here. Certainly you can type out what you want. I can type whatever I want here. And notice that it counts the number of characters you've typed in, and there's a limit. In this case, there's a 1,000 character limit. All right, number 5 talks about partnerships. If you have any partnerships, you can upload letters of documentation detailing them. So there's a browse button here to make an attachment. So here is my answer. And let's say I do have a partnership, and I'm going to click on browse, and I'm going to update or upload a document. In this case, it said Word, but in this case, I have a PDF I'm going to attach. All right, describe your project. So 4,000 characters here. Now, if you start typing in here, you can see you don't have much room to read what you've written. So remember, the RFA has the list of questions. I would, before you start going into the gateway, I would answer those questions in Microsoft Word, something like that, so that you can just come and copy and paste your answer into here. So when you paste from Word into here, it'll keep any carriage returns, any spaces, any bullet points or numbered lists. It won't keep bolding or anything like that, but basic formatting it will. And it'll look a lot better if you, and it'll be a lot easier to understand if you type it in Word first and then copy and paste it in here. Obviously, it has to be less than the 4,000 characters, but you can put that in here and be assured that it looks good instead of having to scroll through this whole list here. For construction projects, upload their certificate as the title of property site, as well as the building floor plan sketch. All right, so again, you could go through there and make an attachment if you wanted to. Address the practicality of the project, including its ease of implementation, 15 points. Again, something else I would have typed in Word and then come here and copy and pasted it. All right, so we've got 759 characters here. All right, cost effectiveness. Again, type it in Word, copy and paste. Oops, I keep putting in too many characters. There we go. What about tracking systems? How are you going to implement tracking systems to monitor the progress? All right, here's my answer for that. Regional Economic Development Plan. Describe how the proposed project aligns with the Regional Economic Development Plan. So the REDC, if you search for, like if you search in Google for New York Regional Economic Development, you'll find the Regional Economic Development page, and there's information about it. I would imagine most municipalities know about it already, but this would talk about how it impacts that plan. Environmental justice. If this project will benefit a designated environmental justice community, again, you can answer that. Community support, how do you have community support, or how can you prove that? So maybe you have some letters of support. We can click on Browse and attach them. And then budget. Does the budget include the matched fund requirements detailed on page 5? So if we go back to the RFP, unfortunately, it's probably not page 5 anymore. It's 3, 4, 5. Is it 5 here? It's actually now page 7, but here it talks about the match requirements. So even though I didn't include the budget yet, I'm going to answer this as yes. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to answer it yet. I want to leave something unanswered. So I hit save, and I've saved this page. Now, I didn't answer number 13, so I get an error on that, but everything else has saved. You can see all the questions and answers, or all the answers I've provided here, have been saved. So the system will never let me submit my application with this error, but at least I can stay here. At least I have everything that I've filled out saved. So I wanted to point out another thing, which is a timeout. The system will time you out after 20 minutes of inactivity. So inactivity can be just sitting here and typing. If you're typing, you haven't saved the page, you haven't told the system that you're still there. What if you're typing and you get a call or you go to lunch or something and you forget to save it? If that happens, you will lose any of the work that you haven't saved after 20 minutes. So you should save every 5 or 10 or 15 minutes. I wouldn't go any longer than 15 though, because again, the system will log you out after 20 minutes of inactivity. All right, so even though I haven't finished this, it has saved it, and I can always come back and finish it later. If I go to the Forms menu, I can see there's that error here in program-specific questions, but I can move on to the next section. Now, another thing we can do is you don't have to do this all in one sitting. I could log out and come back another day or after lunch or something. And if you do that, once I go home, I log in. Since I started the application, it's now a task for me. I can click on Open Tasks and find it. So remember before I didn't have any tasks. Well, now I do because I started application number 6 here. So I can click on that and get back into it. If you aren't the person that started it and you need to search for the application, I can do the same thing. I can search for applications up here, and I can go and find the word food. So I'm saying show me all applications that I've started with the word food in the grant opportunity. And I click on search, and there's only one. And again, I can click on the application number and get back into it. So I get back in it, I go to the Forms menu, and I'm going to go to the next section, which is my budget. Now, I actually have a worksheet or a cheat sheet for myself for the budget. So let me go open that up. I meant to print it, but I didn't. Okay, so here's a budget. So my budget's going to look like this. It's going to be $142,000 project, $142,500, which is $113,000 of grant funds and $29,500 of matching funds. And you can see I've got a breakdown of salary and contractual and equipment. And that's all these items here. So here's salary, here's contractual, and here's equipment. So I'm going to go and fill these items out in my budget in the Grants Gateway. So I'm going to go here to the expenditure budget, and remember I had something for salary. I'll click on salary. So let me go to my cheat sheet, and I'm going to have a residential waste reduction outreach assistant for $40,000. Okay, so full-time person, role responsibility, here is their role. You would explain that obviously better than that. How many people are in this title? One person. What is their annual salary? We'll call it $40,000. Do I have things here? Yep, so we're going to do 40 hours a week at 50% for 36 months. So 40 hours a week, 50%, 36 months gives us $60,000. So the Grants Gateway will not do the math for you. You have to figure out the math based on what you put in here, but it needs to be correct. So remember, you're doing this for 36 months or up to 36 months, not year by year, so not 12 months. So you have to do the math on that. And my match here, did I have match? I forget now. Let me go back up to the top. I had $18,000 in match funds. So I'm going to put in $18,000 here. Oops. And I'll hit save. Okay, so it saves that. Now, if you go back to my cheat sheet, you'll see I had a second person, the food scraps education assistant. And you know what, I'm going to change this to $10,000, and I'll do $8,000 for the other one. So I put in my first person, and I'm going to click on add, just like we did with address. And I've now got another blank line, and I'll put in their name, role responsibility, one person in the title. I have $10,000, 15 hours, percent funded, 100 for 36 months. And I'm going to ask for $30,000. And let's say I have $8,000 in match here. Remember, the matching requirements are listed in the RFA. Okay, so I've now entered in two people. I can toggle between them in the drop-down. I can change them if I want to. I can delete them. I can click on add to add a third, and so on. But I'm good with these two. Well, let's go back to the Forms menu. And every section also has a narrative. And while it's not required by the system, we do want you to fill it out. So you click on Salary Narrative. And it says provide an explanation of any exceptions in staffing patterns and or annual salary costs. Basically, how'd you come up with the math, you know, information about it. Okay? So you'll save that and enter that information, or enter it and then save it. And back to the Forms menu. And in my little cheat sheet here, I had contractual services for $8,000. I'm going to go down to contractual, and I'm going to enter in that line and a justification, and $8,000. And what did I have for match? I had $4,000 in match, so 50% of that. And I'll hit save. Okay, I've taken care of that. Back to the Forms menu. I can do the contractual narrative. So provide a description of service rate, estimated hours and indicate the cost of those contractual services. Basically, how'd you come up with that number? Whoa, hold on. And I'll hit save on that. Okay, back to the forms menu. I have one more section I need to fill out, and that was under equipment. And what do I have for equipment here? Aerated static pile composting equipment. Okay? At $15,000. So let's go down to equipment, and I'll add that. And again, a justification. And are you purchasing or renting it? I'm purchasing it. And I think I said it was $15,000. So I'll hit save. Notice I don't have the ability to put in a match under equipment. It's grayed out for me. So let's do the equipment narrative. And then we'll go look at our budget, how it all rolls up here. And I'll hit save. Okay, so back to the forms menu. Back down to my budget. I've got 2 items in salary, I've got 1 in contractual, and I've got 1 in equipment. I filled out the narratives for each section. Let's take a look at how that all fills out. I'll go to expenditure summary and see what it looks like. So I do get an error because I didn't fill out the match worksheet yet, but it's showing that I have $90,000 in salary because of those 2 entries I made, $18,000 in match funds. I have $8,000 in contractual, $4,000 in match funds, and I have $15,000 in equipment and 0 in match funds. So the match requirements, you can see it's calculated at 19% as a whole. And let me see, am I off? I forget now. Let's go back to the grant opportunity. So actually, I'm below the match requirements. Let's see, 20 for staffing. If DEC, all I'm doing is using the cheat sheet that DEC gave me. So there's 20% of salary, that's good. And 50% of capital, right, so that works out. Here's the contractual, and there's 50% of that. So the match requirement is 0% because it's such a sliding scale that the system can't limit you to one number. So you do have to make sure that what you're putting in for really does match according to, back to the RFA, what the requirements show in the RFA. Because if I went in here, and if I go down, let's say, to personal services again, and for my match, let's say instead of $10,000, I only have $1 here. If I go back to the forms menu and back to the expenditure summary, it is giving me an error because I didn't put in, I don't have at least 20% for that category. So it does look at each required field. You can see there's a 20% requirement there, and it's giving me an error. So it will check on some items, but it's not gonna, you have to make sure that you're not looking at the match requirement as a whole because each category is different. So I'm gonna go back and add that $10,000 there to salary. And that error should go away once I go to the expenditure summary. So I was just told by DEC that equipment should be 50% match, but because it doesn't allow it, that's going to be an issue. So there's a couple ways around it. You're going to have to look for the answer in the Q&A document when we get to it. I'm not going to say now because they may have different ways of handling it, but there's ways that we can handle it to fix this issue that it's not allowing us match. Okay, so I'm going to go to the expenditure summary, and remember I have that one error which says match funds total must equal match worksheet detail total. That's because I didn't fill out the match worksheet yet. And that's at the bottom here. If I click that, it's saying that I said I had $22,000 in match. Well, where does that $22,000 come from? So source, describe the source, if you have any form of documentation to talk about, and then the amount. So I'm just going to write source one info, and let's say this was for $10,000. So I'm explaining where $10,000 of that $22,000 match came from. All right, but I still haven't added up to $22,000 yet. I'll click add, and I'll just do source to info here and $12,000. Obviously, it wouldn't be broken down that cleanly, or in only 2 items here. It's probably several, but to save time, that's what I did here for this, for the purposes of the webinar. So all my match sources, which are 2 of them, now add up to $22,000. If I go back to my forms menu and back to the expenditure summary, you'll see the error is gone. No more error because I've taken care of all of those requirements. Okay, so I've put together my budget, and the next part is the work plan. So if you remember, in the pre-submission uploads, we give you a work plan worksheet, again, just to help you map out your work plan. If you were to click on click here, you could download it and fill it out. We don't want you to attach it, but we're just letting you use it to, we're providing it to you to let you use it to organize your work plan. So I've already done one, or someone's done one for me, and that's right here in this template. So I can just fill out this template. But what it does is it's got the name of the project, the work plan period, and so on, and then a project summary. So the system asks for up to 50,000 characters explaining your project. So here's a sentence explaining it. And then there's a section called organizational capacity. Basically, how is your organization capable of or qualified to actually do this? Do you have the right people in place? Do you have experience doing it? Are the people you're partnering with experienced, and so on? Then it goes down to the work plan itself, which is objectives, tasks, and performance measures. So you need at least one of each. Any objective or one objective can have one or many tasks, and any task can have one or many performance measures. And in this case, I only have one objective with one task and 3 performance measures. But that's just kind of a bare example. You can have, like I said, many of each. And each one has a name and a description, a name, a description, name, a description. Okay? So I'm going to go back into the gateway. I'm going to go back to my forms menu. I filled out my budget or my work plan template. It's allowing me to kind of organize everything. And I'll go to my work plan overview form. And I'll put in the dates. Again, that was 6/5/2019 to 6/4/2022. And then my project summary I'll take from my worksheet here. You didn't have to use the worksheet, but you probably should have typed it in Word or something like that just to make it easier to edit and paste in here. Okay, so there's my project summary. Next is the organizational capacity. Again, I've already written it down here, so I will click on this and, oops, paste it in here. Okay, so there's my 2 items that are required, and I'll hit save on this page. So I've saved that. If I missed anything that had a required red asterisk, I'd get an error, but I didn't. Next is the work plan properties. So I can go to the forms menu, go to work plan properties, and I can put in an objective. So you can see the way it starts is just a blank objective. Once I hit save, I'll get presented with lines for tasks and then performance measures and new objectives and so on. So my first objective was increase diversion of food scraps from disposal. All right, so the worksheet actually doesn't give you room for description. So if you want to, you can describe it a little more in detail here. Something like that. And once you hit save, it's going to give you an error on top because it's saying your objective needs at least one task. Of course, we haven't gotten there yet. So now I'm going to fill out a task. For objective 1, it's going to be task 1.1. All right, so that was compost food scraps at highway garage. All right, and then I had a description for it. And I'll hit save. Now that I've hit save, it gives me another error because I didn't put in a performance measure yet. That's fine. So for 1.1, I'm going to put in performance measure 1.1.1, which is established contractor. Okay. What is the performance measure data capture type? Is it a date? Is it, you're going to do it by a certain date? Let's say I want to do it by, I don't know, 7/1/2019. You can do that. That's easy enough. Or you can do text. Maybe my answer here or my performance measure is text. And I'll go here and I'll grab this. It would be nice if you included quantifiable items like dates and numbers, but they're not all useful in that respect. And I'll hit save. And now I've got one objective with one task and one performance measure. If I wanted to, I could add a task number 1.2. I could add performance measure 1.1.2, or I could start with a whole new objective number 2. Works the same through all of those. So if I put in another objective and hit save, now I've got a task that I have to put in for number 2. Put in a task, hit save, and now I've got a performance measure for number 2.1, and I can enter that in. And I don't have to have just 1 and 1 and 1, I can have 2. Here's another performance measure. And maybe I want a third one. And I'll hit save. So I've gone through and I've made a number of objectives. I've got 2 objectives, a couple tasks, and several performance measures. Now what if I realize that number 2.1.3, I wrote this is the third, maybe it's supposed to be the second one. It should be 2.1.2. You notice these up and down arrows. I can move this one up, I can move this one up or down. So if I move 2.1.3 up, called this is the third, now the one I've called this is the third is actually the second. It's 2.1.2. So the up-down arrows allow you to navigate, or I should say, move things up and down the hierarchy. Now there's also these minus buttons. If it gets to be so large that it's hard to read, you can hit this minus button, and then you can see I've got one objective here, got another objective here, and I've got some performance measures, and I can go in and say, all right, let's look at number 1.1.1 here. So you can see you can expand and collapse using these plus and minus buttons. Okay, so that's my work plan. I've saved it, and I'm going to go back to the Forms menu. And besides this error that I'm purposely not answering yet, we've done everything we need to. Now remember, in the pre-submission uploads, there was the ability to add in supplemental budget sheets, project descriptions, other things like that. So if you wanted to upload something here, let's say I wanted to add something else to question number 6, I'll go here and I'll attach a PDF. So you can attach a PDF, a Word, Excel document, something like that. And I've saved it, and I can see if I click on View File, it shows me what I've uploaded, which in this case is just a PDF that says the word sample attachment on it. All right. Finally, the last thing here in the Forms menu is the Grantee document folder. So in that folder, if you've got other things you want to upload or provide to us, you can see there's a description, a browse, and a comments button, or a comments box. You can save that if you want to and give us more attachments. We're not asking for more, but if DEC ends up, for whatever reason, telling you to put it in here, that's how you could do it. All right, so let's recap here. I'm the grantee. Remember, I can't submit an application. I can only fill out an application. And I've gone through all the different sections of the Forms menu. I forgot to answer one of the questions here. Let's ignore that for now. But I think I'm done. I can't submit it, remember. Somebody else has to submit it, and that's someone in the role of grantee contract signatory in my case. So I talked before about this management tools. 2 items here. Check for errors. So if I click on this, it's going to give me the error for question number 13. Yep, I forgot to fill out number 13. What I should do is click on it and answer it, but I'm not going to. So that was management tools, check for errors. There's also management tools, add, edit people. And if I did that, what I could do is add someone else to this application if I want him or her to be able to get it as a task. So this person, Brent, he's the grantee contract signatory. If I hit save here, I've just saved him the task of searching for the application. It'll now be a task for him on his home page. So I might say, hey, Brent, go ahead and log in, and you can review the application I filled out and submit it. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to log in as him. And he logs in and has that task. I can go to Open Tasks, and I can click on it and get to that application that I've started that is still in application in process. Or I can search for it, applications, search for the word food, or I can even leave it blank and hit search and find it. Either way, you get back into the application, and you should probably double check the work before you submit it. One way you can do it is this, right up here, print application. If I click on that, it'll give me this kind of one-pager that lets me go through the whole application, all the answers I've provided. You can see all this text here. Now, whenever there's an attachment, for instance, for number 5, it tells me there's an attachment, but it doesn't actually let me see it. So you would have to go back to the gateway to view the attachment you provided. But this is everything in here, including the budget. And it does not include the work plan, but that was all pretty easily reviewable on the one page itself anyway. All right, so that was print application. You don't have to do it, but it just helps you review it. You can certainly go page by page if you want as well. All right, so I think I'm done. I think I'm ready to submit it. We know we're not because of that error, but I'm going to try to submit it with an error. So that's going up to status change and application submitted. So if I click that, it's going to do that error check, and it's going to say, wait a minute, you missed question number 13. You need to answer that. So I'll just click on that. I'll go down to question 13. And I can see, oh yeah, I forgot to answer that. Does the budget include the match funds requirements detailed on page 5? Yes, it does. Let's say I've done the math and I verified. In fact, I don't think this one does because of that equipment, but we'll ignore that for now. And I'll hit save. Now the error is gone. Now it should allow me to submit my application. So remember, we're right now in the status of application in process. All right, so what I'm going to do is a status change to application submitted. I'm just going to click on that. And it says, are you sure, do you agree to this? You know, I am who I say I am. I'm allowed to submit on behalf of my organization. I click on I agree. If you clicked on I do not agree, it would just bring you back to the Forms menu. And it's now processing and submitting my application. All right, it just did. How do I know? Couple ways. First of all, under details, we looked at the status of it before. Remember before it was in application in process. Now it's in assignment of reviewers. It's been sent to DEC. They're going to assign reviewers to review my application. After 3/1, of course. All right? Another way is you'll get an email. The system will email you and say you've submitted this application number. And another way is, of course, I don't have a task anymore. If I go back home, no more task. But I still can search for it. I can still get into it. I can still look at it. I'm searching for applications. I can find it and look at all the different fields and forms that I've filled out here. Now, you can ask for it back if it's before the deadline and you realize, oh, I really wanted to type a little bit more in this one section. You can contact our help desk. We'll send it back to you, and you can edit it and then submit it before the deadline again. That's no problem. Obviously, you can't do it after the deadline, though. All right, so the last thing here is if I go to the Forms menu, there is this application versions. And I can tell that it hasn't created it yet, but it will in a few minutes. So let's give it a minute or two, and then I'll show you what that is. That's the PDF that shows my entire application. If you were to save something from the system to prove that you applied or to have it for your records, that's what you would do. So again, if I go to the Forms menu, and again, you wait maybe 5 or 10 minutes after you submit it, under Application Versions, there'll be an entry, and this will be the application that we created. So I can click on it. It's a PDF. I can open it up, and you'll see this is 26 pages here. This is my application as a whole. So let me just zoom out a little bit. Page 1 is just a cover page, my application number, the name of my project, how much I'm asking for in grants, who submitted it and when. Page 3 is the address that I filled out. Page 4 is the answer to the questions. So here's number 1, here's number 2. Number 4 had an answer here. Here's number 5. Number 5 had an answer and an uploaded document. So that document will be found after these questions. So here's one attachment that I should find in a few minutes. Here's my answer to number 6, plus an attachment, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 plus an attachment, and then 13 was that yes, no. All right, so here's those attachments. Now there's nothing really special. I just had this same document over and over again, but here's one attachment. That was to question number 6, I think it was. Here's another attachment, and then we get into our budget. So this should look familiar. This is that overview page for the $113,000. Then we get into the personal services, the $90,000 in that, plus our $18,000 in match. The justification and the narratives, contractual, justification, description, narrative, and then equipment, narrative, and then we move on to the justification. I guess that's in a different order. And then we get into the match worksheet. So this, remember, I had 2 sources. I didn't really do a good job of explaining them, but here they are. And then next is the work plan. We have the work plan summary. This was that paragraph or several paragraphs that I had copied and pasted from Word. Then the work plan itself. Objective 1, task 1.1, performance measure 1.1.1. Objective 2, tasks, performance measures. Remember the one that I adjusted by moving the up arrow? Now it's 2 instead of 3. And then lastly is the work plan organizational capacity. And then after the work plan is any other attachments that were in the pre-submission upload section. And that was just the one that I added. All right, so mine was only 26 pages. Yours, I imagine, would be a bit larger than that. But that's the application PDF. You can save it. It's always here in the gateway, though, and it's always there to be accessed. And that's what DEC will use to review your application that you've submitted. All right, so that is everything. We've gone through the RFA, how to start an application, how to fill it out, how to submit it, the right roles, how to do it. You know, again, make sure you start early. Make sure you don't wait till the last minute to try to submit it. Remember, I tried to submit this and I had an error. And if you did that at 2:58, you might not have enough time to take care of your error and get it in time. The system is not forgiving in that respect. Doesn't matter that you have some explanation to us why you were late. Doesn't matter. You've missed the deadline if you didn't do it by 3 o'clock, and you're not going to. Your application won't be considered.